Is Enzo Fernandez now the best cheap midfielder, and should we be selling Gabriel? These are just a few of the questions that have come out of the back of Game Week 15, and in this video we will be taking a look at my Game Week 16 transfer plans. We have a lot to talk about, so as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like, and of course, smash that subscribe button for daily fantasy content. We are this close to 19k, I know you legends can do that in today's video. And enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, a quick recap on Game Week 15, because even though it has been a bit of a crazy game week with the Liverpool-Everton game being postponed, loads of rotation, and of course Gabriel not featuring, it's actually been a great game week. 63 points and a green arrow to 137k. Now, of course, because some players didn't feature, we are going to be seeing some auto subs, bit more than usual. So I think this is predicted to be about 150k. However, I do have 3 players still to play. Fabianski at home against Wolves, and then the pair of Wolves, Nori away against West Ham, and of course Cunha away against West Ham. So I would like to think that I might get at least a combined 6 to 8 points minimum from these 3 players. It'll be a bit of a disaster if I do get less than that. So we should see a bit of a decent green arrow off the back of this week. But just take a look at my current team right now. Ended up doing the Garnacho Semenyo move with the risk of the Liverpool game getting postponed. I couldn't really take the chances of Garnacho being a 10-minute substitute at the end. So ended up bringing in Semenyo for those measly 2 points. But Dallo with the 1-pointer, a bit of a problem in my team. Man United looking still ropey under Amorim, not really being that team that we were expecting straight away as he was in charge. Gabriel, of course, missing the game once again. That is a big red flag. However, we do have the Champions League back midweek, so we will get an understanding of whether Gabriel is going to be in that squad. If he is, let's say on the bench, that looks really good for Game Week 16. But if he misses the Champions League game as well, and we get no pictures of him in training, then I do think selling Gabriel could actually be on the cards for my team. In terms of the midfielders, Saka with the 2-pointer could have been so much more, of course, if that goal didn't get ruled out for VAR offside, but I still think Saka long-term is a fantastic pick. Brian Mbeumo punishing the sellers. We spoke about this on the channel. Wouldn't have been selling Mbeumo unless it was a desperate move for your teams, and he has come back with that 13-pointer. May actually be a parting gift in my team because, of course, he is coming into a terrible run of fixtures. Cole Palmer. Now, I put the captaincy on Mo Salah, but of course the game got postponed, so the captaincy moved to Cole Palmer, and I'm so glad it did. 18 points, obviously doubled to 36. A ridiculous game against Spurs. 2 penalties and an assist. Obviously a little bit lucky with those penalties, but that is why he is a premium, similar to that of Salah and Saka. Having those penalties just really enhances him as an option, and wow, what a return that was. In terms of the front 3, Vissa with the 7-pointer. Each and every game week, one of my budget forwards has delivered, and this time it was Vissa. And I always felt confident when Brentford have the home games of Vissa getting on the score sheet, and that was the same again. However, could, similar to Mbeumo, be a parting gift in my team. Cunha still to play, and João Pedro just stinking up the team right now after bringing him in a couple of weeks ago. But I need to remember he is a long-term value pick, and a 2-pointer is what it is. In terms of the bench, Semenyo coming in for the 2 points, Vandenberg coming in for the 0-pointer. So let me know how you got on in the comments section. We do have problems with this team, but let's take a look at how it's looking for Game Week 16 without any transfers. So here's how my team is looking for Game Week 16 without any moves made. As I mentioned, 2 free transfers and 1.7 million in the bank. So I'm in a decent spot. Could have been even better if we didn't get that Liverpool game postponed, because I would have actually not sold Garnacho. I would have just benched him and given myself a little bit of flexibility. In hindsight, maybe that was the wrong move, but it is done. We cannot dwell on the past. So looking at my team right now, we do have some problem players that we need to address, but I just want to quickly look at this game week in isolation. Are there any players that really are standing out as terrible picks? And then we need to ask ourselves, even though they look bad this game week, are they actually good long term? So Sells with a decent-ish fixture at home against Villa. Of course, they play in the Champions League. I still think they're in a position where they're trying to play their best 11. So hopefully Forest can catch Villa out on a bad day. And Forest at home against any team, I always think they have a chance of a clean sheet. So more than happy to pal Sells in that game. In terms of the back three, now, Aït-Nouri looks fantastic right now. However, this is coming out Monday morning. Wolves haven't actually played yet, and Aït-Nouri is 1 yellow card away from a suspension. So if he gets yellow carded tonight, he will miss that Ipswich game. And then all of a sudden, the team looks a little bit worse because then I'll have Van den Berg come in for the away game against Chelsea, which even though Brentford have an amazing basically history against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge over the years, I still don't want him in that fixture, especially the way Chelsea are scoring right now. But Aït-Nouri, as long as they don't get yellow carded, is going to be a hold in the team for now. Dalot away against Man City is a problem. Now, I was hoping to have some sort of rotation in my team. It hasn't come about. I think Dalot is actually a sell in my team. Man United defensively have looked okay in certain games, but I just don't think the value is there right now. If he was 4.5 million, I would happily keep him in my team. But at 5.2, 5.3, it's a bit of a cash cow in my team. So Dalot I am looking to sell, and Gabriel is a pending transfer, depending on what we see in the Champions League and those training photos. Right now, I just can't bring myself to sell Gabriel because I have a problem player in Dalot. But if you're in a position right now where you have no other problems and Gabriel misses out once again, and I do think maybe selling him is a decision to have. I'm not going to talk about the 3 premium midfielders. They are there for the long term. Semenyo, the new boy. Bryan Mbeumo is the big one. Now, Brentford away from home this season have just been absolutely atrocious. But Chelsea defensively have equally been poor. And would I be surprised if Mbeumo was to score against Chelsea in this game? Absolutely not. So the only way I'm going to be selling Mbeumo this game week is if using him as a cash cow enables me to bring another improvement to the team. For example, the deliberation that I have right now is actually trying to shift this team to either one of the two. A Trent Alexander-Arnold team, which does Dalot to Trent, but I will have to sell Mbeumo in order to do that. Or I can avoid Trent and I can turn this team into an Alexander Isak team, which will actually mean me selling Visser to upgrade to Isak. But then I will have to sacrifice Mbeumo in order to fund that move. So I basically have a decision. Do I go towards a Trent Alexander-Arnold team or do I go towards a Alexander Isak team? And that is the big decision right now. So let's answer the question in terms of whether Trent is actually essential for our teams, and then we will decide what to do this side. So as I mentioned, Dalot looks like the obvious sell in my team because the fixtures are just awful and I can't really trust Man United. And in terms of selling him, I just don't think there are any cheap defenders out there that I want to buy. I want to try and keep the structure of having someone like a Gabriel and also another quote-unquote premium defender in my team. And I don't really trust anybody outside of Arsenal and Liverpool. Hence why we have got double Arsenal here in Timber and Saliba, and we have got Liverpool's Van Dijk and Trent. Now, I do think Robertson is actually a consideration, but it sounds like Tsimikas could be back in December. And I think with Robertson, his age, potential knocks, I think Tsimikas could come into the team at times. I think Van Dijk and Trent, just because of Conor Bradley's long-term injury, are safer bets and just better options in general. And in terms of Arsenal, Timber and Saliba, I think, are the obvious routes to go for right now in that team. As long as Ben White is still out, and it sounds like it could be for another month or so, Timber, I think, is going to be fine in that team. So the big thing we need to ask ourselves right now is Trent actually worth it? Because at 7 million, it is a big investment. And when we take a look at the fixtures right now for Liverpool, we got Fulham at home in game week 16, which I don't think is an easy game at all. Fulham have proved themselves to be very, very good. So I don't think that is a guaranteed clean sheet. Then we got Spurs away in game week 17. Whatever you think about Spurs, they have the players to score goals regardless. So I don't look at game week 17 and think that is an amazing fixture. Then in game week 18, we got Leicester at home, followed by West Ham away, which by then we could have Lopetegui sacked and we could see a completely different West Ham team. It could be rejuvenated. Then Man United at home in game week 20. I mean, we don't really know what Man United team that'll be. And then Forest away in game week 21. So I would actually argue game week 16 and game week 18 are great. But outside of that, I don't think I'm sitting here thinking there are guaranteed clean sheets in these games. When we take a look at Arsenal, I think game week 16 at home against Everton is fantastic. 17 away against Palace, not amazing. I think, again, being a London derby, that could be a very interesting affair. Game week 18 at home against Ipswich, fantastic. Game week 19, terrible away against Brentford, who have been one of the best home teams in the league. Brighton also have the capability of scoring goals. And then the North London derby, which always throws up fireworks regardless of whatever state each team is in game week 21. So I actually think the fixtures are not amazing. I think there are some great home fixtures in there, game week 16 for both, game week 18 for both. But after that, I think all the games, if you sat here right now and said to me, they're going to concede in those games, I actually would just think, yeah, absolutely. So Trent right now isn't doing enough for me to justify bringing him in. I know that his numbers have started to slowly improve, but everyone's talking about how he got 2 assists when he come on against Newcastle. But anyone that saw that game, it wasn't like he was putting in traditional Trent assists. It was very much just give the ball to somebody and they score. So right now, I am not in a position where I think I need to desperately bring Trent into my team, especially when I have an FPL team that doesn't necessarily have great value. So if I am going to go Trent, I really need to make sure that I want to go there. Now, in terms of the numbers, the big thing that stands out about these players is his shot volume, 1.21 per 90. That's good. And his bonus points is 0.74 per 90. So it's best of that. And we're obviously going to expect him to be the best in terms of creativity. But is it enough for me to rip up my team and bring him in? Right now, I think the answer is going to be no. So does Virgil van Dijk actually offer an alternative? And even though, of course, his chance creation is never going to be there, I do think he offers a bit of an alternative. He's been a monster in set pieces. And the big thing we know is that he's going to have guaranteed game time regardless. They need to keep him in the team if they want any chance of winning this title. In terms of Arsenal, I don't have the double Arsenal defence. 6.1 million for Saliba, who scored 2 and 2, it's worth noting. He is the safe play in that team. However, Timber, I think's minutes are equally good over this period. His underlying numbers are okay. I don't really get excited by Timber as an option, and he isn't great on the bonus points. You are basically paying 5.6 million for a player that doesn't have much goal threat and doesn't really have much chance creation, and he isn't really great on the bonus points. So, to conclude, I do think Van Dijk, he can't cover Trent because I think Trent has more routes to points, but I don't either see anything right now to say to me I need to rip up to bring in Trent into my team. And in terms of Timber versus Saliba, I actually am happy to go to Timber right now, even though the underlying numbers aren't great, just because I know his game time is pretty solid. So Timber for me over Saliba, and right now, because of my team value, it's Van Dijk over Trent. So the big answer is, who do I bring in? I think based on what I'm looking at right now, I actually think I feel more confident just bringing in Jurgen Timber as an Arsenal investment and avoiding Liverpool for now. A bit controversial, let me know your thoughts, but I think Timber is actually not a bad investment for my team. Now, I spoke about how a lot of managers are probably a little bit regretful of selling Bryan Mbeumo, and I actually had game week 16 as the time for me to come off him because the fixtures long term are really tricky, and even when they have their traditional home games, they're against really big teams, and I don't think they're going to have as much joy at home as what we saw in the first part of the season. So I've just been looking at what to do potentially if I was, let's say, to be forced to buy Trent, how I could open up some funds, and I looked at these 3 players. So of course, Gordon is a bit more top of the market at 7.2 million, but if I don't decide to go for someone like an Alexander Isak in my team, can I cover him off by bringing in Gordon as my slight alternative? Now, I really do have eyes on Newcastle because they've got Leicester, Ipswich, Villa in the next 3, which are fantastic. And even against Man United and Spurs, if I had to pick a quote-unquote top team to play, it would be both of those because they are all over the place right now, especially defensively. And then they got Wolves in game week 21. So I actually think those next 6 fixtures are just fantastic for Newcastle. The only problem with them, very much a Jekyll and Hyde team right now. It still doesn't feel like everything's right at Newcastle, but I feel like I still need a piece of that attack. Now, can Gordon cover Alexander Isak? I think the answer is going to be no. But his underlying numbers have been good this season. 0.44 XG per 90, creativity 0.22. My only problem about it is sometimes he'll be getting subbed, and I don't know whether he's going to play off the left or the right. And I think he is an infinitely better player on that left-hand side. And can I play 7.2 million for a player that I have no idea where he's going to play on the pitch? And sadly, I think the answer is going to be no. So I wanted to put Gordon up as a bit of an alternative to Alexander Isak. But for me, I think it's Isak or nobody in that Newcastle attack. Now, everybody has been talking about Enzo. Now, I've got the numbers right now in terms of the course of the season. And he was very much in and out of the team under Maresca in the opening 10 game weeks. But over the last 4 games, we've seen a slight repositioning of him. We're seeing him actually play centre mid, but importantly, being a bit more of a box crasher at times. He's actually having the license to go forward because Maresca is inverting one of the fullbacks, and he's actually then pushing Enzo into a bit more of a twin 10 position at times. And that is really benefiting him. Even with the poor start to the season, 0.12 XG per 90, not very good. 0.23 expected assists, but over the last 4 game weeks, these have been boosted up to around 0.25 XG and about a 0.3 expected assists. So since the repositioning in the team, and I do think being captain, I think his game time is going to be pretty solid over this winter period. I think when he's in this sort of form, you just have to keep playing him. And he is a top talent, and I think Maresca is starting to see that. 4.9 million, I would argue that he is actually as good as Morgan Rogers. Now, when we look at the fixtures of Villa, remember, they also have Champions League. Enzo doesn't really play in the Conference League now after pretty much being promoted to the Premier League team. Forest, tricky. City at home, it's still City. Newcastle away. Brighton, Leicester are great in 19 and 20. When we look at Chelsea, Brentford, Everton away, tricky. Then Fulham, Ipswich, Palace, Bournemouth. The fixtures are really good long-term for them. Do I have a bit more confidence that Rodgers probably operates in a higher position all the time? Absolutely, but at 0.5 million less, I actually do think, I know it's jumping on the bandwagon right now, but Enzo is actually a decent pickup. I do think there will be times where you might play deep in a double pivot, but because of the fixtures coming up, I don't think they require that. And for that reason, I think Enzo could remain a fantastic pick. And of the ones right now, I'll be more tempted to go to Enzo than Morgan Rogers. That might sound crazy, but I am very tempted by that move. So moving into my Game Week 16 transfer plans, and as I've spoken about, for me it's very much a case of, do I shift my team to a Trent Alexander-Arnold team, which would then avoid Alexander Isak, or do I go for Alexander Isak, meaning I avoid Trent? That is pretty much the decision. And as I've spoken about at the start of the video, I don't think Trent is absolutely essential, just because I don't think we're getting the Trent that we've seen in years gone by under Jurgen Klopp. However, it does mean, though, if I avoid Alexander Isak, I kind of by default have to go Trent to keep that premium spot in the team. And I think the fixtures are good enough right now that I could envisage a Trent haul over that fixtures. So the reason why I think it's now or never for them is because Liverpool got Fulham at home, Tottenham away, then Leicester at home, and then West Ham. So if you don't do it now, you're not going to do it in game week 17. And then by the time you get to game week 18, you might look at it and think, oh, I've kind of missed the boat. And the same applies to Alexander Isak, because he's got Leicester at home. That's the money fixture. Then they got Ipswich away. Actually, that's going to be a really tricky game for Newcastle. Then Villa at home. I think that's a good fixture. But again, if you don't do it in game week 16, I don't think you're going to pull the trigger at all. So when we take a look at my team and the different ways of getting to the players that I mentioned, if we were to go for an Alexander Isak team, as I mentioned, selling Visser is the obvious move. Bringing in Alexander Isak would mean that I would need to find in my team 0.9 million. And because I don't like any of the cheap defenders in the game, that would mean I would sell Bryan Mbeumo. And that would leave me with 6.6 million in the bank. Now, a player that I didn't mention was going to be Mitoma. I do think he is actually quite an interesting pickup with Palace at home in 16, West Ham, Brentford. I think the fixtures long-term are fantastic for him, but I never get that excited by Mitoma as an FPL pick. Maybe an oversight of mine that I'm going to regret later down the line. So in terms of the players that we discussed, with 6.6 million, I could easily come down to someone like an Enzo, and that is really going to open up my team with 1.7 million in the bank. And if I wanted to then take a -4, and think about it a bit more as a long-term strategy, what I could do is sell Diego Dallo and go to someone like a Uran Timber. I could even go to somebody like a Saliba if I wanted to, if I was a little bit cautious of Timber's minutes long-term. But my team could look like this for game week 16. I would bench Enzo, the new player, but I think I probably would try and start Semenyo over him. And if I was to have this team as part of a -4, I actually don't mind it. Yes, I wouldn't want to take the -4, but that is how the team would look pretty strong, I think. And again, that would then give me a really strong team going into game week 17. My team would look good. I'd be happy with the front three as it is, and I wouldn't feel like I need to make a transfer. I could even bring in Enzo for Semenyo there. So I'm really happy with that team if we wanted to do it. The other option, as I mentioned, is going for a bit more of a Trent Alexander-Arnold team. So how would that look? Well, if I was to sell Dallo for Trent, that would only give me 0.2 million that I would need to spend. Now, I wouldn't want to downgrade Visser to a cheap option, because I don't think there are any more cheap options available to me. I know a few people are talking about Raul Jimenez as a potential pickup, and I do think there is a chance that he could be an option. But of course, with me, I don't really feel like I want to go there. And I do think Raul Jimenez's fixtures are good at times. Southampton at home in 17, Bournemouth in 19, Ipswich in 20, a decent rotational piece in the team if you wanted to really go there. But I feel like I've been burnt already with Raul Jimenez. But it is a decision that I could have. Vista to Raul Jimenez in the team. Easy bench away against Liverpool, and the team would look something like this. And I think that is actually not a bad team at all. It means that I don't take the -4. It means that I bring in Trent, but it means that I completely miss out on Alexander Isak, who I really do feel like could be fantastic in game week 17. But it would keep Brian Mbeumo. Coming into game week 17, my team would look something like this. Raul Jimenez would come in for Semenyo for that brilliant game at Southampton. And I would have Trent away against Spurs. And if Anderson is fit, then that could happen as well. So I'm not ruling out that option either, actually keeping Brian Mbeumo for a couple of weeks and just reassessing the team. So on reflection, I think that Trent is an easier play, but I get more excited by the Alexander Isak move. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. A -4 will be difficult, but I think long term it actually plays out better for my team. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's Game Week 16 transfer plans video. I hope it's provided some value, and of course, if you have any questions, please do let me know in the comments section. We don't have as busy of a deadline period over the next week, but it doesn't mean the content's going to hold up, so make sure to drop a like and smash that subscribe button for daily fantasy content. Drop your questions in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.